Hello everyone, welcome to the Departamento Laboratorum. My name is Max, and today I'd like to talk to you about Chaos Undivided. I thought it would be fun to do another installment in this series exploring lesser-known groups from Warhammer 40k that you can use as inspiration for your armies. We've done all 4 Chaos Gods now, so it's time to start on the Undivided warbands. While the main Chaos Legions are super cool and would all be great picks for your army, you might find yourself preferring one of these minor warbands for a variety of reasons. Maybe you just resonate more with their lore or color scheme, or you'd prefer to have a faction with fewer established characters and plotlines that you can mold to your particular preferences. And, even if you're more into creating your own custom army, you can still find the ideas from these canon examples helpful in informing your own personal creative decisions. There are actually a good amount of Undivided warbands, some of whom have enough lore to justify full videos on their own, so be on the lookout for those in the coming months. This will be a slightly shorter video, as we're just going to be taking a look at 5 examples to ease us into how interesting and diverse Chaos can be. This will not be an exhaustive look at every single thing each of these warbands has ever done. It's going to be more of a summary going over the general vibe and character of each of them, in order to give you their highlights and help you decide if they're the right pick for you. I do of course plan to do more of these videos in the future, so if you have a specific warband that you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. Before we get started, I just want to mention that if this video does inspire you to start a Chaos army or to pick up any new minis, I have an affiliate link with Geekery Games that you can use to get 5% off eligible orders. Just put in code DEPARTLORE at checkout. Each purchase also helps the channel, so if you're looking for a discount on some Warhammer kits, check them out. I'll put a link to them in the description. I also recently added memberships to the channel. You can get access to some cool perks like members-only polls, shoutouts in videos, and early access to my videos. Of course, there's no obligation to join, but if you enjoy my content, please check it out. Just so I don't have to repeat myself throughout this video, I'll say now that most of the warbands we'll be covering here were first introduced in the 4th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex. The early editions of 40k gave us a lot of great minor Chaos factions, something that has kind of been lost in recent editions, which I think is really unfortunate. Now, without any further ado, let's get started with the oldest warband on this list, the Dark Wolves. Also known as Skyrar's Dark Wolves, these heretic Astartes can trace their origin all the way back to the Horus Heresy. During the conflict, a captain of the Sons of Horus, Skyrar, joined his forces with a contingent of renegade space wolves from the 6th Great Company. Skyrar then led his combined warband to the western fringes of the galaxy to enforce the War Master's dark compliance, collecting tithes and slaughtering the whole population of the planet of Neo-Cadiz and its surrounding systems when they presumably refused to fall in line. All of this freedom and unrestrained slaughter caused the warband to grow independent, however, and when Horus called his forces back for the final assault on Terra, the Dark Wolves refused to come, devoting themselves wholly to reaving and slaughter. Since the heresy, the origin of the Dark Wolves has become obscured, with some believing them to be a chapter sent to the edge of the abyss as punishment for some crime and becoming tainted. Others whisper that they were a full Space Wolves great company that fell to chaos, rumors that were fueled by the first sighting of the warband after the heresy being in the Fenris sector, as well as by the Space Wolves defeating the Dark Wolves in M38 when they joined forces with a Khornate demon prince Talaman to assault the Imperium. Skyrar's Dark Wolves are known to favor close combat and to mark their armor and vehicles with unholy runes. They have been involved in at least 3 major incursions against the Imperium, including the aforementioned campaign with Talaman, in addition to their normal reaving. They also maintain an armored company of steel, comprised of several heavy tanks, including their lead Fellblade Aegis Vizier. The Dark Wolves wear black armor, with light blue upper legs and trim, and silver and red detailing. Their symbol is a demonic red wolf's head. With the new Space Wolf kits and a new edition of Horus Heresy coming out, the Dark Wolves would be an excellent choice if you wanted to start a new army using these new models. It'd be really fun to kit bash them to display their unique history, and you could potentially use the same army in games of both 40k and Horus Heresy, so you're really saving money if you think about it. They also have multiple different combat preferences, close combat and heavy vehicles, so there are several different ways that you can play them, and if Russ is the next Primarch to return, there's a lot of fun story stuff you can do with that. Let's move on to another warband who loves to make use of older equipment, the Reborn. First seen by Imperial forces in the year 795 of the 40th millennium, the Reborn are known for their use of antique weaponry and their heavily corroded armor. They appear to be active in the area surrounding the warp storm known as the Maelstrom, as this is where their most famous engagements took place. The Imperium began to suffer from increased raids and assault by Chaos and Xenos forces in the Maelstrom zone over the course of several centuries, starting in 720 M40, a few decades before the first sighting of the Reborn. In 577 M41, the militarized hive world of Signax, an important Imperial bastion and the most populated world in the northern Maelstrom zone, came under attack from death cults that had festered and spread within its underhives. Assisted by the Chaos Space Marines of the Reborn, the Traitors were able to fight off an intervention by the Mantis Warriors chapter and seize the planet's missile silos, firing them all off and obliterating the entire planetary population. The loss of such a strategically important world caused massive disruptions in trade and security in the region, with whole star systems becoming lost to the Imperium. As a result, the High Lords of Terra created the Maelstrom Warders, a group of Space Marine chapters led by the Astral Claws, permanently garrisoned in the region. The Maelstrom Warders, and the Mantis Warriors specifically, managed to get back at the Reborn during the Scourge campaigns of 640 to 651 M41, when they struck at enemy strongholds in the heart of the Maelstrom. In the Battle of Taskar's Wound, the Mantis Warriors were able to take revenge for their losses at Signax by defeating the Warband. While the Reborn do still continue to exist, we don't know of any other campaigns involving them. Although given what ended up happening to the Maelstrom Warders, you could say they got the last laugh. The Reborn wear corroded metallic orange armor with black trim, and their symbol is a black skeletal bird. The Reborn have a really cool color scheme. I personally find it really fun to paint metallic Chaos Space Marines, and you could also make some good use of rust and corrosion effects on them. Their use of ancient equipment also allows you to incorporate some bits from older Space Marine and Chaos kits into your army, and you could even use them as an excuse to do a whole army made up of older Warhammer kits, which would be really fun. They also have a bit of a rivalry with the Mantis Warriors, so if you have a friend with an army of them, they'd be a fun pick. And you could also play up some interesting interactions with the Red Corsairs, given their history and the fact that both are present in the Maelstrom. The Reborn's aid to the Signax death cults could also act as good inspiration for cultists, and you could maybe incorporate that into their beliefs, or at least the beliefs of your specific warband. Although if you wanted a warband that would be right at home fighting alongside a death cult, this next example is for you. The Company of Misery. Originally a loyalist chapter known as the Desolate Brotherhood, they began suffering from gene seed degradation in M32. As a result, they were assigned to perform unglamorous and unpleasant duties, such as clearing space hulks, assaulting death worlds, and operating in quarantine zones. After suffering through a seemingly endless procession of increasingly worse engagements, and a catastrophic campaign in the acid swamps of misery, the Desolate Brotherhood fully succumbed to despair, believing that all hope is a lie and falling into the embrace of chaos, changing their name to the Company of Misery. This presumably occurred sometime in or before M37, as the Company of Misery's first sighting by the Imperium was on the world of Madan 4 in M37. They have since gone on to attack Imperial worlds multiple times in order to spread their ideology, such as when a group of them under Captain Akron attacked an archive world of Numisin in order to destroy the records kept there and demoralize the Imperium, before they were stopped by the arrival of the Legion of the Damned, as detailed in the story The Dark Hollows of Memory. The Warband also took part in the campaign known as the Death of the Witching Moon in 013 M41, where they joined with another warband known as the Tenebrae in taking control of the Forge Moon of Kizia after an unnatural, warp-influenced eclipse caused its entire population to descend into murderous insanity. Kizia then became known as the Witching Moon and began to spread its chaotic influence throughout the Agathon system. The Company of Misery and Tenebrae were only driven back into the warp after a brutal conflict against the forces of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Space Marines of the Charnel Guard, Iron Hands, Stormlords, and Angels Porphyr chapters, among others, and the Adeptus Sororitas Order of the Black Sepulchre, bearing a holy relic, the Book of Tears. Kizia was then purged of all life and returned to the Adeptus Mechanicus for reconsecration. Later, the Company of Misery allied with the Hatred of Castellan, a wandering Dreadblade Chaos Knight that serves no permanent master. This unholy alliance led to the invasion of the Cephamine system and the enslavement of the entire population of the planet of Ceph 9. The Company of Misery then went on to kill every Psyker on the planet, although the world still managed to send out a distress call, albeit with an added challenge from the Hatred of Castellan to the Freeblade Knight Canis Rex. The Dreadblade then traveled to the planet's moon, eagerly awaiting Canis Rex's response. The Company of Misery have red armor with black trim and black flame detailing. In older depictions, these flames take up almost half of their armor, although more recent examples restrict it to the Warband symbol, which is a red arrow with black flames. The backstory and motivations of the Company of Misery are really interesting. There's a ton of fun story ideas there that you could use for your army. They also seem to have some connection with Chaos Knights, so if you wanted to field both Chaos Space Marines and Knights, they'd be a fun choice. And if you wanted a painting challenge, their black flame patterns on the armor could be a really cool project. Even if you just kept most of the basic troops red and black and only put the flames on characters or something, it'd still be pretty cool. And if you're into kit bashing, you might be able to take their history of gene seed degradation and use it as an inspiration for some fun and unique mutations. While the Company of Misery went through a lot of hardship, this next example might actually have them beat on that front. The Death Shadows. Like many other Chaos Space Marine warbands, the Death Shadows owe their existence to an event called the Abyssal Crusade. I plan to do a full video on the Crusade, and I have covered it in previous videos, but to summarize, in M37, 30 Space Marine chapters undertook a crusade into the Eye of Terror on the order of an Imperial Saint, Basilius. This was, as you can probably tell, a terrible idea that backfired horribly, with the result being that most of the chapters who took part fell to chaos. The specific reasons for the Death Shadow's fall are unknown, but we do know that they were originally the Lion Guard chapter, and that the Warband specializes in sabotage and terror tactics. Their previous name, and the fact that the only depictions we have of them show them wearing robes, suggest that they were Dark Angel's descendants, although this is not confirmed and is really only based on speculation. The Death Shadows also appear to have a rivalry with the Ultramarines for unknown reasons, as during the First Tyrannic War they were preparing for a strike on Ultramar from their base on the planet of Sabari, until the arrival of a tendril of High Fleet Behemoth. The shadow and the warp cast by the High Fleet drove their leader, the sorcerer Malefor, insane, and while the disorganized Chaos Marines fought back and managed to slay many Tyranid bioforms, they were destroyed in less than an hour. Some members of the Warband did survive, however. For example, the sorcerer Leuven Valstor was scouting Ultramar when the Tyranids devoured his brothers. He believed that some of his brothers had managed to survive in the shadows, and decided to bide his time in the warp rift known as the Screaming Vortex, honing his psychic powers so that he could take command when they inevitably re-emerged. Valstor proved to be correct, as elements of the Death Shadows did take part in the blood-borne invasion of Ultramar, led by the Iron Warriors Warsmith Honsu. Although they were defeated, it's possible that other elements of the Warband also managed to survive. The Death Shadows wear entirely dark blue armor and black robes, and they use generic chaos symbology. I really like the design of the Death Shadows. Robes on power armor always looks cool to me, and you could make good use of some of the fantastic looking newer Dark Angels bits with them. If you had a friend who plays Ultramarines or High Fleet Behemoth, they'd also be a great choice. You could play up a real fun conflict there. There's also a lot of great story ideas you could play with for your warband, with their Ultramarine and Tyranid rivalries, potential Dark Angels connection, and them almost being wiped out. And with their all dark blue armor, they'd be pretty easy to paint. You wouldn't have to worry about trim at all. Honestly, the only thing I don't love about them is their name. It sounds a bit too much like a 14-year-old naming their super cool badass OC, but it's still fun in a real goofy way. From a warband that was almost wiped out, let's move on to one that's still burning bright. The Pyre. The sole warband on this list not from the 4th edition Chaos Codex, the Pyre were introduced in 3rd edition, in the second version of the Chaos Space Marine Codex. But most of the lore we have on them comes from the Fantasy Flight Games Deathwatch RPG. First sighted near the Eye of Terror in 131 M41, the Pyre prefer to fight in close-quarters urban environments, and as you'd expect, they make heavy use of flame weapons, often waiting until the most opportune moment to burn their foes to ash, rather than attacking at the first opportunity. They have been seen fighting alongside demonic and cultist forces, but never other traitor Astartes for unknown reasons. The Pyre are also known to have used the Space Hulk, the Unholy Harbinger, as a base of operations at one point. Forces of the Pyre came into conflict with the Imperial Achilles Crusade in the Jericho Reach in late M41, with several companies of the Warband being spread out across the region fighting against Imperial forces. The Pyre were notably present on the world of Vanity, with an impressive fortress known as the Crucible, where the human sorcerer Kole Soulfire planned to perform a ritual on an artifact known as the Sphere in order to increase his power, and a small outpost known as the Torch present on the planet. The Pyre stationed at the Torch were there to keep an eye on the Warband's mutant hordes. The Astartes, especially their leader, the chosen Terminator Gotha Darkflame, considered this an insulting post, and since Darkflame has possibly the coolest Chaos Terminator art of all time, I'm immediately on his side. The Warband on Vanity came into conflict with the Deathwatch kill team, which resulted, and spoilers if you do want to play the pre-written Deathwatch RPG campaigns, in the Warband's defeat and the Sphere being secured in a watch fortress. The Pyre wear orange armor with black trim, and their symbol is a burning skull over a black star of chaos. If you enjoy flamers and other flame weaponry, the Pyre would be an obvious choice. Given that their most notable conflict was against the Deathwatch, they'd also be a great pick if your friend has a Deathwatch army, or in a game of Kill Team against a Deathwatch player. They also make heavy use of cultists and demons, so they'd be a good pick for you if you enjoyed those units. And again, they do have one of the coolest examples of Chaos Space Marine art in my opinion, so they deserve points for that. So those are the 5 Chaos Undivided warbands for you to base your army around. But what's that you say? Are 5 examples really enough? Wouldn't 6 be more fun, and also more pleasing to Slaanesh? Well, since you insist, I guess I could do just one more example. The Angels of Ecstasy. Now, longtime viewers of this series may actually remember that I actually mentioned the Angels of Ecstasy in the first video in this series on Slaaneshi warbands. I said that we had no information on them other than their name and design, and this is not actually true. I apologize for the mistake. I learned after that video, from a Mishmash kitbashing video linked in the description on the Warband, that they actually made one other appearance. Mishmash is fantastic, by the way, great kitbashing videos, and you should definitely give them a watch. The Angels of Ecstasy starred in a short story called A Song for the Lost by Robbie McNiven. I will be spoiling this story for the rest of the section, so if you don't want spoilers, feel free to skip to the end, or better yet, go read the story and then come back. It's only like 25 pages. Originally a loyalist chapter known as the Sons of Ulthunas, the Angels of Ecstasy turned to Slaanesh worship thanks to the corrupting influence of their chapter master and later Chaos Lord, Ulix the Enthralled. Before being taken by the chapter to become a Space Marine, Ulix was a novitiate in an Imperial cathedral and was often punished by the cruel bishop for forgetting his hymns. His only comfort came from Sister de Fey, a mysterious woman who taught him prayers and sung him to sleep every night. Her song stayed in Ulix's mind at all times, even managing to survive the hypno-indoctrination needed to become a space marine. Eventually, sometime in late M41, it drove him to lead his brethren to slaughter 10 billion souls in an event known as the Ganymedean Betrayal, resulting in the chapter fully embracing Slaanesh. Ulix's obsession with hearing Defay sing her song again led him to seek out and capture Eldari to bring to her aboard the Warband's flagship, the Praise Eternal. Defay was, of course, a Slaaneshi demon, and she would sing her song for Ulix once more as the unfortunate Eldari prisoner was tortured and killed by her fellow demons. While they mostly appear to be a fairly standard Slaaneshi warband, the Angels of Ecstasy make heavy use of noise marines, who are constantly singing and are invigorated by new sounds, such as the shrieks of the Eldar's howling banshee aspect warriors. The warband also includes a few possessed marines, including Ulix's lieutenant, Equus the Anointed, who disapproves of Ulix's obsession and wishes to take command of the warband for himself. The Angels of Ecstasy wear pale pink armor with black trim, and their symbol is a black Slaaneshi rune. While the warband doesn't have a ton of lore, there is enough for you to get a feel for them and how they think and act. You could do a lot of interesting stuff with Ulix and his obsession, or with a warband led by a potential rogue lieutenant. They're also a good choice if you're a fan of noise marines, and if there are a lot of Eldari armies in your playgroup, they'd be a pretty good pick. I do again apologize for missing the Angels of Ecstasy in my Emperor's Children video. Warhammer is a huge setting with a ton of lore, and sometimes stuff falls through the cracks. If I ever do miss anything in the future, please let me know and I'll be happy to issue a correction. Now that we've actually gone through all the examples, I hope that you found this entertaining. I really love looking at these minor Chaos warbands. They add a ton of flavor to the setting and make it feel larger. It's more fun seeing all of these different diverse groups running around causing trouble than it is seeing the same 9 legions every time, even if I do like all the Chaos legions. I hope that Games Workshop adds more examples like these 6 in future articles and codices. As you can tell, most of these warbands come from earlier editions. New ones are still added, but a lot of them are just a name, or maybe get a couple of lines of lore at most. They don't get as many appearances, or even color schemes like the old ones did, which is a real shame. I do have faith that the Games Workshop writers will eventually add some more warbands though. There definitely is a market and the fan base for it. As I stated previously, I will be doing more videos like this in the future. Let me know in the comments which of these warbands was your favorite, and if you have any examples that you'd like to see in coming videos. If you enjoyed this video, please also let me know in the comments and consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel and the algorithm. And if you want to support the channel more directly, consider becoming a member. For now, thank you and have a great day. Bye!